I'm Randy Reed, editor of the Edison Report, and we're here in Washington today for the 3rd Annual National Lighting Bureau Board of Directors Forum. Our panel is Outdoor Lighting and Safety and Security. I'm joined by Mark Lean of Osram, Sylvania, Bob Parks, the Smart Outdoor Lighting Alliance, Janet Lennox-Moyer with the International Landscape Lighting Institute. Bob, the first question will go to you. Is contrast, luminance, and color more important for visibility than illuminance level and uniformity?
Yeah, I think this is a really new area of emerging research that we've seen just recently. Nancy Clannon and Associates did a 2-year study of 4 retrofits of street lighting to LED. And during the process, they tested illumination levels by reducing those levels down to 50% of minimum, IES minimum. And what they found was small target visibility stayed the same. So what we're specifying now in most standards is easy. It's luminance or luminance and uniformity. It's the mantra. It's what everybody designs to. But does it actually improve visibility? And what we saw in this study was reducing uniformity, or making uniformity not as good, actually increased visibility. It made it easier to see. So this may seem counterintuitive, the idea that contrast is more important than lighting level. But you think about it, if you have a brightly lit area and dark behind it, you have contrast. If you spread the light out totally uniformly, you don't see as well because there is no contrast. You have the same lighting level everywhere. As we change all of our cities over to LED, we have an opportunity to think differently. Look at how we've lit city streets for the last 50 years. Is it better? Does it improve visibility? And I think the new research coming out will lead to, we need to rethink our standards. The standards that we're using are old.
And the work that Nancy's done with contrast is, it's valuable. It may be to some extent application specific as well, because uniformity is still going to be important. But you have those 4 factors for visibility: size of what you're looking at, luminance, time, and contrast. And in these lower light levels, contrast becomes extremely important. One example that I recalled from doing lighting design in the past was in churches, where people would pull out hymnals and I couldn't even get a reading on my light meter. Churches with special zeal, I think they called it, had a half a foot candle, but the hymnal was black type on a white piece of paper. In those low light levels, you were able to see it because it was a high contrast black font against the white paper. So yeah, I think contrast in the research that's being done is going to be extremely helpful, particularly with the solid state lighting sources. But Bob and I were talking earlier about something, and he touched on it, but I really want to expand on it. The timing is extremely critical right now for our industry to move forward with standards for safety. We have, over the next 6 years, a golden period of time. According to the new Department of Energy draft, we will see 75% of our outdoor lighting as LED by 2020, in the next 6 years. In 2012, just to give you an example of where we're at now, California said in 2012 that 2% of their outdoor lighting was LED. And they're an early adopter, high kilowatt hour rates. So that's an indication that we're in single digits, certainly right now in the United States, and the DOE is projecting 75% of the installed base of outdoor lighting will be LED by 2020. We have a very short window of time as we replace all of these fixtures to make sure that we do it wisely and that it benefits people as we do it.
I want to make a point about that as well, because when we're talking about uniformity versus contrast, there's several parts to that. One is that if we're doing lighting on the task level, then uniformity is very important. But in the overall environment, we need contrast, as Bob was saying, so that we can differentiate, and so that human beings who see vertical surfaces first can see their surrounding environment, which will help them to feel more comfortable.
And another factor we've talked a little bit about is, we're turning from high pressure sodium to LED, and what we're getting now that we've never had before is true color contrast. This is a new factor that's going to make white LED significantly better for visibility. And I think the standards are just lagging so far behind. I worry that they can't keep up with the growth in SSL. Solid state lighting will be almost completely, everything will be solid state lighting in 10 or 15 years, and the standards will just then be modified to take advantage of the new research. So I don't know how we fix it, but if we're going to make good decisions, standards have to lead the industry, not follow. And I don't know how that happens, but that's the most important thing that we could do now. And Mark and I have batted around. It's like, it may not be possible, but if we don't do it, we're going to make a lot of mistakes.
And to further identify that problem, the SDOs, the Standard Development Organizations, are volunteer organizations. So they have historically been slow. And that's been more acceptable because this industry's progress has been slow until the last decade. It wasn't until 2005 that we saw LED products come into our marketplace for viable architectural lighting. And within a very short period of time, we find ourselves needing a lot of new standards, and we need them quickly.
Mark, does that mean that we have to change the way we're doing this, and instead of having, even though IES and NEMA and the other organizations are made up of volunteers, do we need within those organizations to have money set aside for working on the new guidelines?
Well, we've talked a little bit. Unfortunately, I think we need a new standards group, and I'm an IES member and a proud IES member, but if we can't do it within the existing system, I don't think we can wait 2 decades for it to be updated. And the standards, as Mark Rea was saying, most of the research is there. We have what we need to actually come up with good visibility standards. Specifically, I'm worried about outdoor lighting, and if we take it outside of the industry, this may be heresy, but we get it outside into some independent group, that at least cities have an alternative. When I talk to New York City Department of Transportation, they'll replace 250,000 streetlights in the next 2 years, and they won't change a thing. The exact same illumination levels that they were using, the exact same uniformity, and the only difference is it'll be an LED. So they're doing a swap, 1 for 1. They're not worried about adaptive controls, and what they tell me is, we can't make these changes without being sued. We need standards as something to base our decisions on, where we'll have ambulance chasers lined up to take pot shots at us. And we don't need that. We have enough difficulty making this massive transition. Why would we add headaches to our job? We'll just do it safe. So they'll put more light down. It will be more glaring light because it'll be a higher color temperature than what they've had. And you look at communities that have already done this, and this is what frustrates me, is that communities go out and do public surveys. They ask their citizens, how do you like what we've done? And you look at things, San Francisco did this 2 years ago in a pilot study. They put down IES minimum illumination levels, and they asked people, compared to what you had, which was HPS, how do you like it? 58% said it's too bright. 48% said it's too glaring. And the community told the decision makers what to do, and yet when they install it next year, and they'll install all their new lights over the next 2 or 3 years, they'll be at the same lighting levels with the same level of glare that was not well received during the pilot study, and the same reason. They can't risk not doing it with standards to back them up. So I mean, I see the future, and the future needs standards that cities can choose. And I wish it was the IES. If it's not the IES, it needs to be somebody else.
Bob mentions perhaps another standards organization. Do any of you really see that as a viable?
I think what we need to do is have our standard organization put some money on it and have the team be paid with a deadline.
I think the deadline's critical, and what Mark Ray was suggesting when I was talking with him earlier was that it's a matter, we have the information that we need. It's a matter of bringing some key individuals into a room, the stakeholders, but a smaller number than sometimes are involved, because there's paralysis by analysis and there's a lot of agendas when you get those big groups. But bring that small group together to make that standard, and I would agree totally with you that they need to have a completion deadline.